Hello, New Hampton band students. How are you? This is Sam Fettig, and I'm very much looking forward to cranking out some answers to the questions you've posted, so thank you for doing that. But first, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for learning and working on and performing the music that I wrote for you. It means so much to me. And I actually saw the video of your concert, and I was very, very impressed. You should be very proud of what you did. It was just fantastic. It was so enjoyable to watch. And shout out to your teacher, Mrs. Adam, for putting it together and all the work that she does. So bravo to all of you. Um, Bunch of questions here. Mrs. Adams said I didn't have to answer all of them necessarily, but I'm going to. And a lot of these kind of I would clump together because there were some similar questions. So let's just get started here. First question: are you British? I am not British, but I am Wisconsinish. I live in the state directly adjacent to the east of you there in Iowa. And in fact, I checked it out, and if I left my house and did a straight line due west, I would pretty much run into you in New Hampton a little under 4 hours later, just under 200 miles. So actually, that's not too far away. We're kind of in similar boats here in the upper Midwest, small town kind of deal. But no, I am not British. These next handful of questions are concerning some favorites. It says, what is your favorite color? Which piece would be your favorite, which I assume, which piece from the Color series, and then what's my favorite song, and what's the favorite song I've ever made. Well, let me tell you about that. I have some thoughts about this favorite business, because throughout my life I've been asked what's my favorite color, what's my favorite food, what's my favorite movie, and let me tell you, I honestly do not have a favorite anything. I have a list of favorites, but I've found that I could never declare like what is my favorite color. I just can't. I just don't have one. I got no better answer for you, I guess. Today my favorite color is yellow. If you ask me tomorrow, it'll be something different. And I suppose my favorite food is cheeseburger, but I don't want a cheeseburger every day, so um, I got to be careful. I'm famous for really long answers to questions. Okay, so and the same thing with songs and from the Colors suites. Gosh, I really can't pick a favorite. Just can't. So let's go on to the next question. Why did you choose to write for a small middle school? Interesting question. I love writing for uh, your age group. And in fact, I am a middle school band teacher myself. I'm not a full time composer. That's not what I do for my full time job. I am first and foremost a middle school band teacher myself, and I really love writing for that level. And the question asked for a small town middle school. Um, I'm not a fancy person. I also live in a small town. Oh, we'll see if you think it's small. I live and teach in a city of 12,000 people, which to me is sort of big-ish, you know. So um, there we go. Next question: do you like your job? No, no, I love my job. I really do. I'm very, very fortunate to be, for my job to be in music, teaching and composing and other things that I do. I love my job. These next handful of questions have to do with how long I've been composing and how I got started composing, and what inspired me to become a composer. Interesting question. Like I said, I don't do it full time um, as my only job. I'm also a teacher. But you know, when I was your age, I was very involved in band. Band was very important to me. My main instrument is saxophone, and it just captivated my imagination from an early age. I remember when I was even in middle school, I would sit really close to my cassette tape player. This was before the internet or anything, and I would just be so curious about how it was put together, and I would listen to it, and I would write the notes out, and then go to the piano or my saxophone, and is that it? And I'd just write things out, and I think that earliest experience of just spending time with music, just because I loved it, is really how I got started composing. And then when I got older, I got into high school, and I would actually write music out for my buddies and I to play, friends of mine that were in band, just songs that we wanted to play. I would arrange those tunes. And so I just spent time doing it from the youngest age just because I liked it. Let's see what these ask here. How long have you made music? So that would be, you know, 4 decades. What inspired me to become a composer? That answer lies in the fact that, like I said, I'm a middle school band teacher myself, and I started writing for my own students just because I enjoyed the creative process, but also because stuff that I wanted my students to play I just couldn't find, so I would just do it myself. And having done that for many years, I just got better and better at doing it, just like anything you spend a lot of time doing. So that's really how I started. This next question is actually kind of a tricky one for me to answer, but I'll give it my best shot. It says, how did you come up with these ideas for composing? Boy, I think the best answer I can give for that is that I think about music a lot. It's in my head a lot. I practice and play my instrument a lot, so it's a big part of my my thought life. I spend a lot of time with music. And I'll go back to something I said earlier that my earliest experience when I was your age, I would just listen to music and try to figure it out and write out what I was hearing. That's called transcribing. That's something any of you can do. Um, just start really basic. I mean, can you sit down with a staff paper and write out hot cross buns? I'm not kidding. Something that simple. And I guess before you can compose music, can you figure out and understand other people's music? So, if somebody's a novelist and writes novels, do you think that person is also somebody who reads a lot of books? Yeah. Somebody who is a movie director, do you think that they're really into movies and they watch a lot of movies? Yeah. So just surrounding myself with music and studying music, I suppose, is how some of these ideas just come out of me. Um, Next question along those lines: how do you figure out what notes to put where? How do you decide on how it should sound? Again, it takes years of practice and study and experimenting too. When I was writing the color compositions, a lot of it is trial and error. I'll just start cranking stuff out and I'll be like, I don't really like that. What if I put this melody in flutes instead? And a lot of it is trial and error and experimentation. That's all part of the creative process. Let's see here. Some more questions about composing, kind of similar questions. How do you let's see, how do you know what notes sound good with others, and why do you pick those notes? That's actually a really good question. As Mrs. Adam is teaching you all about music and you're practicing and learning your scales, um, it all has to do with that, and that's all called music theory, and that's a big part of what a musician and a composer studies. I'm a very creative person and I love music, but something that's fascinating about music is that there's a whole math and science side to music, and there's a very logical way in which pitches and notes that work good together and notes that don't work together. Um, it's very interesting, but yeah, studying music theory. And then some questions about how do I decide what instruments would sound good overlapped with each other and mixing instruments together. As a composer, that's something I think a lot about. But as a musician in a band, that's something to think about too. And I would encourage you to listen when you're in band rehearsals. Listen to what the sound of other instruments sound like with your instrument. Being a good member of a band ensemble is about balancing and blending and making everything sound good together. So I do that as a composer. You do that as a musician in your band. This next question is interesting. It says, is it hard writing a new song? Well, yes and no. No, it's not hard because it's what I do, but you need to remember what I've talked about earlier, which is it comes from a lifetime of studying the craft and learning about it, and so all that goes into it. But today, writing is fun because it's something I've learned to do, and the same can be true for you for whatever it is that you decide to pursue in life. Well, there are a couple of questions here about the colors. How did I pick purple and blue, and why did I put green and orange together? Well, that's very interesting. The idea for the color concert was the idea of your teacher, Mrs. Adam, and we were talking about what colors we could use. I find this whole idea of things that music can represent that aren't necessarily musical, I find that all very interesting. Stories behind music and what we can learn about through music. And colors is a very fascinating topic. Right behind me there is a big bright yellow flower, and I think it's universally understood that yellow is kind of a bright, a happy color, and so there's also bright and happy music, right? So having colors and music working hand in hand. Now, to answer that specific question about purple and blue, well, purple has long been a symbol since ancient times, a symbol of royalty and prestige and upper class and royalty. And so when we think of royalty in music, we think of kings and castles and that whole genre. And that's a certain kind of music that has fanfare and proclamation kind of music. And that's what I tried to do with Purple. And blue, well, that's the blues, right? And I had a little trouble with that at first. I mean, how do you go from royalty and all that stuff to modern in the blues? And I don't know that it does very much. So that was kind of a quirky thing, putting purple and blue together. But I went with it because it was fun. Green and orange, I put those together because my mind kind of went with this whole idea of Irish music. And green and orange are the colors, the national colors of Ireland, and they're the colors in the Irish flag. And Ireland has a very rich musical tradition, so that helped me with compositions. And then green, to me, represents primarily in nature. Green is very much a color in nature, and Ireland has sweeping, beautiful green landscapes, and to me that makes me think of a certain kind of music, very lush, sweeping, kind of cinematic music. And then orange, also sticking with Irish music, orange is a very bright, fun kind of a color. And one kind of Irish music, an Irish reel or an Irish jig, is very fun music that people dance to and is very fast and energetic. So making those connections between colors and music, I thought was a really neat thing to do. And then black and red for the fifth graders, black, dark, so I used a minor key, which has more of that dark kind of quality musically. And then red is a little bit brighter, so using a major key, which is more happy music. And why red instead of something bright like yellow? Well, I learned that your school colors are black and red. So all kinds of connections to be made there, which was a lot of fun to do. These next couple of questions have to do with the 7th and 8th grade, green and orange. Why did I choose John Foley? Well, I did a little bit of research, and going with this theme of Irish music, I thought, well, what can I draw from the New Hampton area that I could somehow tie in here? And one thing that I found was this fella, John Foley, and I guess the house that he lived in is on the National Registry of Historic Places in New Hampton, and I found that John Foley was, in fact, an Irish immigrant. And so the Green movement, it had a very adventurous quality to me, and when I imagine an immigrant from the 1800s, before technology, before steamboats and powerboats and cars and trains, to get on a boat and move your family across the Atlantic Ocean to a new country just seems like such an epic adventure to me. It seemed to match the music. Plus, hopefully, some of you kids, if you don't know about John Foley, now you do, having some interest in your local history. And then, why did I choose? Gosh, I should have looked up how to pronounce this. But that river near you guys, the Wapsipinicon, how's that? The Wapsipinicon River? Well, that Irish reel or Irish jig music, like I said, is very fast, energetic music, and I was just looking for a local name to use for it. And the Wapsipinicon, that's kind of a fun name, and it fit with the fun music to me. This question, if I could change one thing about the performance, what would I change? Well, I guess I assume that student meant your performance, because I watched the video of your performances. Well, I'm not just saying this to be nice. I wouldn't change a thing, honestly. Like I said, I'm a middle school band teacher myself, so I know exactly what middle school students are capable of. The fact that that they just started playing their instruments that year or the year before or 2 years ago, and they're not quite high schoolers yet. Again, when I saw your performance, I was super impressed. And you guys should be really proud of yourselves, like I said. All right, well, here's a question about composing. It said, was it hard to figure out what tempo it was supposed to be? And honestly, some things about the creative process can be kind of tricky, but that was one of the easier ones. Tempo means how fast the music is. And gosh, if I was writing, say, the orange, the Wapsipinicon reel, that music is supposed to be fast. So there you go, fast music. And the blues for the sixth graders. The blues has a certain kind of tempo to it, so depending on what you want the music to depict, tempo is one of the easier ones to figure out. Let's see. Is it or was it fun to create the songs to have other people play? Yes. It's a blast. It's fun to just write because as a creative person, I love to write, but boy, to have someone else play the music that I write, tons of fun. Okay, this question. What was the hardest song to make and what part? That's a really hard question to answer, and I apologize, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer that one. All music presents its own set of challenges. On the one hand, I could say the 7th and 8th grade pieces, because being older students, it's more challenging music, I guess, but it's also a challenge to write for 5th graders, to make music for students that just learn to play their instrument in their first year, but make the music sound cool. There's a challenge to that also. So I can't really give a good answer. I don't know that anything that I wrote for the color compositions jumped out as being the hardest. Now here's some questions about how I actually do the writing. I think this question was, how do I make the music like this audio samples that I made, and do I handwrite it, or what technology I use? So there are computer programs these days, certainly, for writing out music. There are two main brands, the biggest ones. One's called Finale, and one is called Sibelius. And Sibelius is the one that I've used for many years. And I sit down at a computer and use certain keystrokes to enter the notes. If any of you are interested in getting into this, there is a free one called it's called Muse Score, M-U-S-E Score, Muse Score, and I think you can get a free account, and that one's pretty good. If any of you are interested in starting to dabble in that. And then for making the recordings, that also comes from the computer program. It's computerized sounds. You probably notice that if you listen to it. It's not a real orchestra or band. And not as good as real musicians, but the sounds these days are better than they were even 10 years ago. You can make a halfway decent, realistic recording. Well, one student asked, how long did it take me to write the color compositions, all the color songs? And actually, that prompted me to dig back at my emails to your teacher to kind of get a timeline of things. And we first emailed each other about all of this January 10th. And the first draft I submitted to her was Black and Red. And also I had the Iowa Corn song done, which I understand you guys didn't play, which is totally cool. I was happy to have written it. That draft was emailed to her on February 1st. So that's about 3 weeks. Now, honestly, and then other drafts came to her like March 1st and then early March. So let's just say 6 to 8 weeks for everything. And honestly, I'm kind of a fast writer, which is a blessing, but it's also a curse. I really got to be careful to step back and look at my work and make sure I'm careful about things. But if I did this full time and I had nothing in my life going on but writing this music, I could conceivably have written it all in like 4 or 5 days. But as I said, I'm a full-time band teacher. I'm also a husband and a father and have a life, and I do other things too. So, it was a little under 2 months of really devoting any extra time I had to it. So hopefully that paints a little bit of a picture of how long that all took. Well, New Hamptonites, it looks like I got through all of the questions. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and thank you for posting those questions, and thank you again for being a part of this with me. You guys rock. The concert was awesome, and I really appreciate all that you have done and all that your teacher, Mrs. Adam, did. I wish you the best as summer is coming near. I'm sure you all know how many days of school are left. I'll be honest with you. I'm a teacher, and we usually go until like June 9th, June 10th, June 11th, which is kind of late, I think. But this year, for the first time ever, our last day is May 31st because they're doing like construction in the summer, so they're giving us a longer summer, so I'm pretty excited about that. May 31st. So yeah, I hope you all have a great summer, and best wishes to you, and thank you again so much. Bye-bye.